In the far reaches of the galaxy, where thousands of stars burned in silent harmony, a great decision was made, one that would change everything. Deep inside the Central Council chamber, countless alien leaders gathered. Their forms were different, some tall and glowing, some small and shadowed, some made of energy itself, but all shared one belief: humans were weak. They had been watching Earth for a long time, studying its people, its wars, its growth, and its limits to them. Humans were nothing more than a young species, still fighting among themselves, still trapped on one fragile world. A perfect target, the council chamber echoed with low voices as the final vote approached. Massive fleets waited across nearby systems, ready to move the moment the order was given. One by one, the leaders gave their approval. Earth would be taken. Resources would be claimed. The species would be controlled or erased. It was meant to be easy. Far from that chamber, Earth moved as it always had. Cities were alive, people worked, laughed, argued, dreamed. No one knew that eyes from across the stars were watching and judging, but something was different. There was a silence in space around Earth that few noticed. Satellites still orbited, ships still moved between planets. But beyond that, a strange emptiness existed, like something was waiting back in the council chamber. One observer hesitated. He was older than most. His species had existed long before many others had even discovered fire. He had seen wars that erased entire civilizations. He had studied forgotten histories buried deep in ancient data cores. And something about Earth felt wrong. He spoke softly, questioning the decision, asking if more time was needed. But his voice was ignored, drowned by confidence and pride. Humans were nothing. The vote was complete. Earth was officially declared. The next target signals were sent across the galaxy. Fleets powered up. Engines began to glow with deadly energy. Commanders prepared strategies, expecting a quick and effortless victory. Some even joked about how fast it would be. Over minutes passed. Then something unexpected happened. Before any fleet could begin the attack, a signal appeared. It did not come from the Council. It did not come from any known alien system. At first it seemed like a normal transmission, weak, simple, easy to ignore, but it did not fade. Instead, it spread, moving faster than anything they had ever recorded, reaching every system, every ship, every station at the same time. Every screen changed, every communication channel was taken over. Silence filled the fleets as the message played. It was short, too short. No complex language, no advanced symbols, no threats, no fear, just a few simple human words. But something about it felt heavy, like it carried a meaning far beyond its size. Systems began to react. Advanced AI that controlled entire fleets paused, unable to process what they were receiving. Navigation systems flickered, weapons powered down for a brief moment, then restarted. In the council chamber, the same thing happened. Lights dimmed, data streams froze. Even the oldest systems struggled to respond. The older observer felt something cold move through him. He had seen this before. Not the message itself, but the feeling, the sudden shift in reality, the quiet warning before something massive revealed itself. He rushed to access deeper archives, hidden records that few were allowed to see, ancient files locked away for millions of cycles. His hands trembled as he searched. Then he found a fragment. A broken record from a time when the galaxy was very different. It spoke of a species that once stood against many, a species that had disappeared without a trace, a species that should not exist anymore. His eyes widened. His voice shook as he whispered to himself, "This is not possible." Around him, panic had not yet begun. Most still believed this was nothing more than a strange human reaction, a final attempt to scare them. But the older observer knew better. He looked back at the message, replaying again and again. Across every system, the same simple words, unchanged, unafraid, waiting. Far away on Earth, hidden deep beneath oceans and mountains, something had awakened. Systems older than any known civilization slowly came online. Signals moved through networks that no alien had ever detected. And for the first time, humanity was no longer silent. The galaxy had made its choice, but so had Earth. The signal did not stop it. kept repeating across the galaxy like a quiet heartbeat that no one could escape. Every ship, every station, every system continued to receive it no matter how many times they tried to block it or shut it down. It always returned stronger, clearer. Classer alien commanders grew uneasy. This was not normal. They had faced advanced enemies before they had seen powerful weapons and complex codes, but this was different. This was simple, too simple, and that made it terrifying. Inside one of the largest warfleets, a group of scientists gathered around a central console, trying to understand the signal they isolated. It broke it apart, studied every layer of its structure, but there was nothing complex inside. Just a few human words repeating again and again. We remember that. Was all, yet every time they analyzed it, something changed. Systems slowed, calculations became unstable. Some of the most advanced artificial minds began to hesitate, as if something deep inside them refused to continue. One scientist tried to erase the signal completely from their systems. For a moment, it worked. Screens went dark. Silence returned. Then suddenly every system restarted at once and the message came back, louder, closer, almost as if it was inside the ship itself. Fear began to spread, not openly, not yet, but quietly, inside the minds of those who understood what was happening. In another sector, a different fleet prepared to jump directly toward Earth. Their engines charged space around them, twisted with energy ready to tear open a path for instant travel. The command was given jump, but nothing happened. The engines remained active, but the jump would not initiate. Navigation systems refused to lock onto coordinates. It was as if space itself was rejecting their movement. Crew members exchanged nervous looks. This had never happened before. They tried again. Same result then. The signal appeared on their main screen. We remember one of the officers whispered that maybe it was a warning. No one answered far away in the council chamber. Chaos had not yet fully erupted, but tension was growing fast. Leaders demanded answers. Why were fleets delayed? Why were systems reacting? Why was a primitive species able to send a signal across the entire galaxy? No one could explain. The older observer stood in silence, watching everything unfold, his earlier fear now turning into certainty. He accessed deeper layers of forbidden archives, pushing past security barriers that had not been opened in countless cycles. Ancient records began to load, damaged, incomplete, but still there. Images flickered, records of a war so massive that entire star systems had vanished, and in those records, one symbol appeared again and again, a symbol that looked almost human. His breathing slowed as realization hit him. This was not a new threat. This was something old. Something that had been erased on purpose. He found a final fragment, a warning left behind by those who survived that ancient time. Never target the ones who remember. His hands trembled. Around him voices grew louder, leaders shouting, demanding action, some calling for immediate attack, others calling for retreat, but it was already too late. Back in the fleets, strange things continued to happen. Weapon systems powered down without command. Defense grids shifted on their own. Communications between ships became distorted. Some crews reported hearing faint sounds behind the signal, like echoes of something much larger hidden beneath the simple words. Others claimed they saw brief flashes on their screens, shapes that did not belong to any known species. Panic began to grow, not controlled, not hidden anymore. Real fear in one isolated outpost. An officer made a desperate decision. He ordered his team to trace the origin of the signal directly to Earth. They focused all systems on the source, pushing their technology beyond safe limits. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly the signal changed. Not the words, but the feeling behind them. It became heavier, closer, aware. The officer felt it before he understood it, like something was looking back at them, watching, judging. The screens filled with data, then went completely blank. Darkness covered the entire outpost. Every system shut down at once. Complete silence. Then slowly, one screen turned back on, just one, and the message appeared. Again, we remember. But this time, something new followed. Coordinates, not of Earth, but of something far beyond, something hidden, something waiting far beneath the surface of Earth, deep within structures buried long before human history. Something ancient moved. Machines older than civilizations activated one by one. Systems connected across the planet and beyond, and for the first time, the truth began to rise. Humanity had never been weak. Humanity had been quiet, and now the silence was over. The galaxy was no longer calm. What once felt like control now felt like slipping through unseen hands. Every system, every fleet, every mind was focused on one thing: the message and the new coordinates. Those coordinates spread just like the signal, reaching every command center, every scientist, every leader. No one understood what they pointed to, but everyone felt that they mattered deep within the central council chamber. The air had changed. Confidence was gone in its place. Something heavier, something colder had taken hold. Leaders who once laughed at humanity now spoke in low, uncertain tones. Some demanded the fleets move forward and crush Earth before anything worse happened. Others warned that they were already too late. The older observer stood in silence again. But this time, he did not hesitate. He projected the ancient records into the center of the chamber. Images filled the air, broken fragments of history that most had never seen. Stars burning, worlds collapsing, fleets vanishing without a trace. And among it all, a single repeating pattern. A presence not loud, not aggressive, but unstoppable. He spoke slowly, forcing every leader to listen. Long before your empires, long before your wars, there was a conflict that nearly ended everything. A species rose against the galaxy, not with numbers, not with size, but with something else. Something we could not understand. We erased them from history. We buried every record. We told ourselves they were gone. His voice grew quieter, but we were wrong. Silence filled the chamber. No one argued. No one denied. Because deep inside, they all felt the truth. The message was not a threat. It was a reminder. Far across the galaxy, multiple fleets began to move toward the given coordinates, not toward Earth, but toward the unknown location hidden within the signal. They needed answers. They needed to see what was waiting. As they approached, the region, space itself began to change. Stars appeared dimmer. Distances felt longer. Navigation systems struggled to maintain accuracy. Some ships reported time delays in their own systems, moments where actions happened before commands were given. The closer they got, the more reality seemed to bend. Then they saw it at first. It looked like nothing, just empty space, but sensors reacted violently, detecting massive structures hidden just beyond normal perception. Slowly, outlines began to form, vast shapes stretching across the void. Not ships, not stations, something else. Something ancient. One captain ordered a closer scan. The moment the scan touched the structure, every system on his ship froze. Not malfunction, not damage. Just stillness, like everything had paused. Then the message appeared again. We remember, but this time it was not on the screen, it was inside their minds. Every crew member felt it, a presence, not hostile, not kind, simply aware, watching them, judging them. Some fell to their knees, unable to process what they were experiencing. Others tried to speak, but no sound came out. The captain stared forward, his thoughts racing. This was not technology. This was something beyond anything they understood. Back on Earth, hidden networks continued to awaken. Massive underground chambers opened, revealing structures that had been silent for millions of years. They were not built by current humans, but they were made for them, waiting, watching. Ready data flowed across these systems, connecting to the signal, spreading through the galaxy. Each transmission carried more than words. It carried memory, history, truth, and slowly that truth began to reach those who could understand it. In the council chamber, leaders began to see fragments of that past, not through screens, not through data, but directly in their minds. Visions of a war they had never lived, a war where a single species stood against many, not conquering, not destroying, but correcting, bringing balance. And when the galaxy turned against them, they did not fight to win. They chose to disappear, to wait, to return when needed. Panic broke completely. Some leaders ordered immediate retreat. Others tried to destroy their own records, hoping to erase what was happening, but nothing worked. The signal could not be stopped. The memory could not be erased, and the presence could not be ignored. In the distant fleet, one final event changed everything. One of the ancient structures moved, not fast, not violent, just a slow shift that sent waves across. Spaceships lost control again. Systems overloaded, some simply powered down completely. And in that moment, a new realization spread. These were not weapons. They did not need to be. Their existence alone was enough. Back on Earth, a final system came online, a core hidden deeper than all others. It activated with a low, silent pulse, and the signal changed again, no longer repeating, no longer waiting. It spoke once more, clearer, stronger, undeniable. We did not forget, And this time the entire galaxy understood. Humanity had not returned. Humanity had always been there, watching, waiting, remembering the moment the message changed, the galaxy stopped pretending. This was no longer confusion. This was fear, real deep, unstoppable. Fear, fleets that once moved with pride, now drifted in hesitation. Commanders who once spoke of conquest, now whispered about survival. The ancient structures remained in the darkness, silent and endless, stretching across space like something that had always existed but had never been seen. No weapons fired. No attacks launched, and yet entire fleets were already defeated. Systems across multiple warships began to shut down again, not violently, not with damage, but with quiet control, as if something invisible was simply turning them off one by one. Navigation gone, weapons offline. Communications fading. The ships were not destroyed. They were being held. One captain tried to override everything manually. He screamed. Orders, force commands tried to restart the core systems for a brief second. It worked. Lights flickered back. Engines responded. Hope returned. Then everything stopped again. This time, slower. Deliberate, like a reminder you are not in control. Panic spread fully. Now crews abandoned discipline. Some tried to escape pods. Others froze, unable to move their minds, overwhelmed by the presence surrounding them. And still no attack came. Far away in another sector, a smaller fleet attempted something desperate. They opened fire on the nearest ancient structure. Energy weapons. Charged beams of pure destruction shot across space, striking the surface of the massive form. Nothing happened. No damage. No reaction. The energy simply disappeared, absorbed without resistance. Then something new occurred. The attacking ships lost power instantly, not gradually, not with warning, just gone, floating lifeless in space. And inside those ships, every system displayed the same message. We remember back in the council chamber, chaos turned into collapse. Leaders argued, shouted, blamed each other. Some demanded surrender. Others still refused to accept what was happening. But the older observer stood still, watching everything with quiet understanding. He knew this moment had already been decided long ago. They had ignored the warnings, they had erased the past, and now the past had returned. He spoke again, his voice calm but heavy. They are not fighting us. They are showing us. The room fell silent. No one questioned him this time, because deep down they all felt it. This was not war. This was control. Across the galaxy, reports continued to flood in, ships unable to move. Fleets unable to communicate, entire sectors going dark without damage. It was as if the galaxy itself was being rewritten in real time. And at the center of it all, Earth remained still. No massive fleets launched. No visible defenses activated. Just silence. But now that silence felt different. It was no longer empty. It was full of something, watching everything far beneath the surface of the planet. The ancient systems reached full synchronization. Massive networks connected across oceans, mountains, and deep underground layers, forming something far greater than any single machine. This was not technology in the way the galaxy understood. This was something older, something designed to wait. And now it was awake. Data flowed through it, connecting to every signal, every system, every piece of technology that existed across the stars. There was no resistance, because resistance required understanding, and no one understood this. In one isolated command ship, a young officer stared at the screen, his breathing fast, his hands shaking. He had trained for war his entire life. But this was not war. This was something else. He whispered to himself, asking a question no one could answer. What are humans? The screen in front of him flickered for a moment. It showed nothing. Then slowly, new words appeared, not the same as before, not just memory. This was something more. We waited. The officer felt his chest tighten. The meaning behind those words was heavier than anything he had ever known. They had waited not for years, not for centuries, but for something much longer. Back near the ancient structures, something shifted again. Not movement, not attack, but presence, stronger, clearer. Undeniable ships that were still operational began to receive new data streams, not forced, not hidden, but open images, truth. They saw glimpses of the past, the war that had been erased, the moment when the galaxy had turned against a single species out of fear, and how that species had chosen not to destroy everything, but to step away, to hide, to wait, to remember. Panic turned into realization. This was never about power. This was about balance, and the galaxy had broken it back on Earth. The final layer of the ancient system activated completely. The signal expanded beyond what it had been before, no longer limited to ships or systems. It reached every mind, every living being across the stars. And for the first time, everyone felt the same thing. Not fear, not anger, but judgment, quiet, calm, unavoidable judgment. And then a final change. Came the signal stopped. Repeating, the silence returned. But this time it was different because now everyone knew the next message would not be a warning. It would be a decision. The silence did not feel empty anymore. It felt like the moment before something final. No signals, no repeating words, no visible movement, but every mind across the galaxy remained awake, waiting. Because now they understood the next message would decide. Everything fleets that once filled the stars with power now drifted without purpose. Commanders no longer gave orders, they waited for something they could not control. Some species began sending surrender signals toward Earth, messages filled with fear and apology, hoping it was not too late. Others tried to hide, shutting down their systems, retreating into deep space, believing they could escape what was coming. But nothing escaped, because this was never about distance. This was about awareness in the council chamber. The great leaders of the galaxy no longer looked powerful. Their forms now seemed smaller, uncertain, fragile. They had ruled for ages, deciding the fate of countless worlds. But now they could not even decide their own. The older observer stood once more in the center, his eyes closed, as if listening to something no one else could hear. Then slowly he spoke. "They are choosing." No one asked what he meant, because they all felt it too far beneath Earth. The ancient core reached its final state. Energy moved through it, not as power but as thought. A network beyond machines, beyond simple design. This was something alive in its own way. Not human, but connected to humanity. It processed everything, every action, every decision, every history of every species. Nothing was hidden, nothing forgotten, and then it answered. Across the entire galaxy, every system came back online at the same exact moment. Ships regained control, weapons reactivated, communications restored, but something was different. Everything responded slower, like the galaxy itself had changed its rules. Then the message appeared, clearer than before, stronger than ever. You were given time. Every being saw it, not just on screens, but within their minds. The meaning carried weight deeper than fear. Memories followed, not just images, but full experiences. Species saw their own past, their own choices, the wars they started, the worlds they destroyed, the lives they erased. Nothing was hidden from them anymore. Some collapsed under the truth. Others screamed in denial, but none could escape it. The message continued. You chose destruction. The words did not accuse. They stated simple, undeniable. In one distant fleet, a commander tried one last time to fight. He ordered his ships to fire toward Earth again, believing that action was better than waiting, weapons charged, targets locked. But before a single shot could be fired, the ships froze. Not systems, not engines. Time itself seemed to stop around them. Crew members remained still, their thoughts locked in place. Then slowly control returned, but not to them. The ships turned not by command, but by will beyond theirs. They faced away from Earth. Weapons powered down, and the message appeared. Once more, we do not seek war. The commander fell silent, his last hope gone. This was never a battle he could win back. In the council chamber, something even more shocking happened. The leaders lost access to their own authority. Control systems no longer responded to them. Their commands meant nothing. Their power was gone. The galaxy no longer belonged to them. It had shifted not through force but through decision. The older observer finally opened his eyes, his voice soft but clear. This is the correction. No one argued, because now they understood this was not revenge. This was balance, returning across thousands of systems. Changes began: war, fleets disarmed, weapon systems limited, aggressive species restricted from expanding further, not destroyed, not erased, but controlled, guided. Every action monitored, every choice weighed. Freedom still existed, but not the kind that led to destruction. And at the center of it all, Earth remained silent once more. But now that silence carried authority, not fear, not mystery, but control in the minds of every being. One final message formed, not spoken, not written, but understood. You will not repeat the past. The galaxy trembled, not from fear this time, but from realization they had been judged. and they had been spared. But only once, far beneath Earth, the ancient systems began to slow, not shutting down, just returning to quiet, watching, waiting again, because this was never about ending anything. This was about making sure it never began again. And somewhere deep within that endless network, a final thought moved: if they forget, we will remind them again. The galaxy did not celebrate. There were no songs, no victory, no relief, only a deep, quiet understanding that everything had changed forever. Worlds that once lived in fear of invasion now stood still, unsure of what this new balance meant. Fleets that once ruled the stars now moved slowly, carefully, as if afraid to disturb something, watching them from beyond sight. No one spoke of war anymore, because war no longer felt possible. The systems that controlled weapons remained active, but limited. Every attempt to push beyond those limits failed without explanation. It was not force, it was prevention. And everyone knew why. Earth, the name itself, carried weight now, not as a target, but as something far greater, something older, something that had seen everything before. In distant regions of space, some species still struggled to accept what had happened. They whispered in hidden channels, questioning if humanity could truly control the entire galaxy without even showing its power. Some believed it was a trick. Others believed it would fade with time. But none of them acted, because deep inside, they felt the truth. This was permanent. In one isolated system, a group of leaders gathered in secret, hoping to find a way around the control placed upon them. They studied their technology, searched for weaknesses, tested small actions to see if the limits could be broken. At first, nothing happened. Then one of them pushed too far, a single command sent toward activating a forbidden weapon. For a brief moment, the system responded. Hope rose. Then everything stopped. Not just the weapon. Everything. Time slowed. Thoughts stretched, and the presence returned stronger than before. Not angry, not violent, but absolute. The message formed again, not as words, but as understanding. You were warned. The leaders felt their minds fill with something overwhelming, not pain, not fear, but clarity. They saw what would happen if they continued. Not visions of destruction, but consequences, complete loss of control, complete removal of choice. They understood immediately. And they stopped. Across the galaxy, similar moments occurred, small tests, quiet attempts, all ending the same way. Not with punishment, but with reminder. Humanity did not need to destroy, because humanity could prevent. Back on Earth, life continued as normal. People walked through cities unaware of the full truth behind what had happened. Children laughed, skies remained calm. Oceans moved as they always had. Nothing looked different, and yet everything was. Deep beneath the surface, the ancient systems remained active but silent, watching every signal, every shift across the stars. They no longer needed to act, because the message had already been delivered. In the council chamber, what remained of the once powerful leaders sat in stillness, their authority gone, their control reduced to observation. They had become witnesses to a galaxy that no longer needed rulers. The older observer stood once more. But now there was no fear in him, only acceptance. He looked around at the others and spoke one final time. We thought power meant control. We were wrong. Power was restraint. No one responded, because there was nothing left to say. Far beyond known space, the ancient structures slowly faded from perception, not disappearing but becoming unseen once more, returning to the hidden state they had waited in for ages. They had done their part, the balance had been restored, but they would remain always watching. Waiting on Earth, a final quiet signal moved through the deep network, not broadcast, not shared, just a single internal confirmation. The system acknowledged completion, not an end, but a continuation. Because this was not a victory, this was a cycle, and cycles always return in the minds of a few sensitive beings across the galaxy. A faint echo remained, a memory of the message that had changed everything. We remember. Those words no longer brought fear. They brought understanding, a reminder that the past was never truly gone and that some things did not forget. As time moved forward, the galaxy adapted, trade resumed, exploration continued, new alliances formed, but beneath it all, one truth remained constant. No one would ever again mark Earth as a target, because now they knew Earth was never the target. Earth was the test, and the galaxy had already failed once. It would not be given another chance.